It is an honour and a privilege to welcome Mayor Sadiq Khan, Dr. Omar Sahota, the Chair of the London Assembly, Rear Admiral Donnell, and distinguished guests of the Greater London Authority to the flag-raising ceremony here today. I would like to welcome members of the London Assembly, a perfectly timed aircraft, GL staff members, veterans, and my colleagues from the Royal Navy, the Army, and the Royal Air Force. And a special thanks to the Royal Marine Band from CTC RM Lympstone. I know you have a very busy schedule at the moment, and I suspect you are even greater demand now after your excellent performance at the party in the Palace just a few weeks ago. Especially as you were even able to persuade Her Majesty the Queen to join you on percussion in your opening number. We are here today to witness the flag raising outside the new offices of the GLA in recognition of their support to the armed forces in the past and their commitment to do so in the future. The GLA supports serving personnel, reservists, veterans, including those who are discharged, wounded, sick or injured, and they also provide support to the wider service family, spouses, civil partners and children. This is all to help them navigate the additional burden placed on them by service life. On the 24th of June 2019, our current Mayor signed the Armed Forces Covenant. It clearly states that the GLA recognise the value of service personnel, both regular and reservists and veterans, and what their families contribute to the business and to our country. But the Mayor did not rest there. There is a further scheme that defines the role of the employer can play in recognising the contribution that service families have made and continue to make to our country. This employment recognition scheme has 3 levels: bronze, silver and gold. Earlier this year, the GLA received the bronze award and applied for the next stage. The silver award requires considerable work to demonstrate your support to the armed forces community, not only in positive policies, but also proactively demonstrate that the armed forces community are not unfairly disadvantaged by their commitment to our country. So, I have great pleasure to inform you that the board sat last Thursday and the GLA application for Silver Award was unanimously accepted without any reservation. Thank you for your continued support to the armed forces, and I wish you the very best of luck when you go for gold. We now must focus on our proceedings for today. So before we have a poem read by Cadet Petty Officer Sahu, I'll invite the Chair of the Assembly, Dr. Omar Sahota, to speak on behalf of the Assembly.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the new City Hall on this very special day. We gather here today to mark the Armed Forces Day, a moment for us to pause and remember the veterans of the previous generations, as well as those who show our support for those continuing to serve us. As Chair of the London Assembly, I want to take this opportunity to speak on behalf of all Londoners across the city and give thanks to those who risked their lives and to those veterans whose service we always remember and we will forever be indebted to. The London Assembly is proud to honour the Armed Forces Covenant and support the Armed Forces community. We have long appreciated the contributions of the serving personnel, veterans, military families of our city and our communities. In the past few months, we have sadly been reminded of the global importance of our armed forces following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Our armed forces are a vital force in the global fight for peace and security, and to this end, they play an important role in fighting terrorism and delivering aid. The last few years have also reminded us of the importance of armed forces on our home soil, with many lending their specialist skills and knowledge to support the nation throughout the pandemic. For the 14th year, we raise the flag at City Hall today to demonstrate our support for armed forces and respect all who serve ahead of the Armed Forces Day. It's wonderful to be joined today by our senior representatives of the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, and the Ministry of Defence to mark this occasion. I'm also happy to welcome attendees from the London University Royal Navy Unit, Croydon Unit C Cadets, HMS President, the Army London District, and the Royal Marines Band Service. We will always be grateful for their work and dedication to keeping us safe and others safe too. And so today, we recognize that it's our duty as we sleep safely in our beds to remember not only those who have lost their lives in conflicts past, but also who serve and sacrifice today. So now I would like to hand over to Petty Officer Cadet Sahu for reading a poem.
When you see a soldier, by Kelly wrote. When you see a soldier, be sure to shake his or her hand, and let that soldier know you're grateful for the protection the military affords our land. But most of all, express your thanks for every soldier's personal sacrifice. In order to serve our country, they risked their entire lives. Thank you.
All guests are now invited to stand for the flag raising and for the national anthem.
Hooray! Up!
Ladies and gentlemen, please sit down. I'll now invite the Mayor to come up and give his address.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can I begin by just thanking Commander Swain, not only for introducing me, but for helping us host this event today, and also for his decades of service to the Royal Navy and to our country. As ever, it's a privilege to be part of this ceremony and to be in such decorated and distinguished company. I want to acknowledge and thank in particular the senior representatives from our armed forces who are in attendance today. In particular, Rear Admiral Donald Dool, CB of the Royal Navy, Brigadier Andrew Wright, MBE of the British Army, and Air Commander Ian Tolfs, OBE of the Royal Air Force. I also want to echo the welcome to those from the London University Royal Navy Unit, the Croydon Unit C Cadets, HMS President, the Army London District, and the Royal Marines Band Service. Thank you to all of you for your service and your support for our armed forces. After 2 years of COVID restrictions, it's a real pleasure to be able to welcome a proper, full-sized audience to the new City Hall for this event. Though it appears that we've come through the worst of the pandemic, we mustn't forget the incredible efforts and contribution that we saw from our armed services during this crisis, from helping with logistical planning to delivering PPE to our hospitals, from transporting and storing vaccines to setting up and staffing vaccination centres. Our armed forces played a critical role in ensuring that our city and our communities could weather this storm. And for that, on behalf of all Londoners, I want to say thank you. Once again, you've demonstrated that in times of adversity, you will always be there for us, and you will never, ever let us down. In times of crisis and conflict, it couldn't be more reassuring to know that we can always count on the men and women of the British Army, the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force. Of course, this year, as we've heard, you've had a new challenge to contend with in the form of Russia's terrible onslaught against Ukraine. I want to take this opportunity to salute our military for everything it's doing to support the Ukrainian people and uphold our values of freedom, democracy and human rights. It's been inspiring to see how Londoners have opened their hearts and their homes to Ukrainian refugees, and we're right behind everything our armed forces are doing to help Ukraine defend itself and resist the tyranny of the Russian invasion. Not only is this war barbaric and completely unjustified, but it's also too reminiscent of the previous deadly conflicts on European soil. It's also a powerful reminder of exactly what our armed forces give to Britain: the defence and security you provide, the protection for our values and our way of life, and the willingness and readiness to risk your lives to save others. The fact is, we only enjoy liberty, security and prosperity today because of the sacrifices made by members of our armed forces, both past and present. So on this day, at the beginning of this week, when we celebrate our armed forces, I want to pay tribute to our men and women in uniform for your hard work and selflessness, for your courage and commitment, and for embodying the best of our city and our country. Let me end by saying this. At City Hall, we have and always will fly the armed forces flag with pride, ensuring we show our support and appreciation for our military communities, as well as honour the obligations we have to you under the Armed Forces Covenant. In fact, nothing could be more important, because if you put your life on the line for your country, the very least you deserve is fair treatment, respect and the right support. So for that reason, I want to finish where I started by once again thanking our incredible armed forces. Thank you.
Mayor, Chair, thank you for your very kind and appreciative words to our armed forces today. As a serving member of those armed forces who is living and working in London, I can state with some authority just how exciting and enjoyable it is to live in London and to be, albeit a temporary Londoner for a time being. And I know that I'm not alone in thinking and feeling that way about your great city. And the reason for that is simple. London respects, appreciates and values the armed forces and the work that we do. So, on behalf of all of the members of all of the armed forces who live and work in your fine city, I thank you and London for your welcome, your hospitality and for your support. The challenges that our service men and women face change continually, as do those of us who choose to serve. I am proud to be in an open, inclusive and modern military force that is both ready and willing to do whatever is required to protect our nation, be that in support of our National Health Service or our other civil authorities, or on military operations all around the world. And as we think about those operations, such as the Falklands War 40 years ago this year, we are reminded that Armed Forces Day is also about our veterans. Our veterans who have made deep sacrifices that require and deserve both our gratitude and our ongoing commitment to support them as they have supported us. 3 years ago, Mayor, when you very kindly signed the Armed Forces Covenant, London committed in the most practical of ways to ensure that those of us who serve and have served are not disadvantaged by that service. As a husband and a father who has asked his family to relocate with him multiple times, both abroad and across the United Kingdom, I know firsthand just how important your commitment to the Covenant is to so many. The help that we need is real and it is ongoing, and I thank you for providing that help. Finally, I'd like to close today by thanking all who have made today's event possible. The Royal Marines Band, our regular and reserve forces, our poet reading, and of course our cadet forces. I hope you all have a most enjoyable week and enjoy Armed Forces Day on the 25th of June. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That brings to conclusion the service for today. So I'd like to thank everybody who has attended, both those as VIP guests and also those of the military, and a special thanks to the band who will now play some incidental music as we lead off. So I'd like to invite everybody who's been here for the service in for refreshments in the London lounge. Now, but I'll just leave the VIP guests off first, and then ask you to follow on after. Thank you very much.
Hooray!